Everyone, as you can see, I've got my grubby little mitts on the new Dungeon Master's Guide, and this is the variant art cover. I got it from the LGS where I work at, and as I don't have a whole lot of time today, we're just going to take a quick peek inside the cover here. Now, ignore that, please. So sorry. Work stuff in here. But, yeah. Right out the gate, we've got some interesting artwork depicting a house here and everything. We have an interesting glossary and all that. I apologize. I did not plan this out before I hit record. So, right here in Chapter 1, as you can see, they've go over the basics, like what a DM is, what they do, and over, like, right out the gate here in the DM tips section, this is stuff that I have personally been preaching and telling people for a while now. I actually did a, hi Bean, I just did a thing at our local library where I went over the basics of how to be a DM. But, let's see, they have embraced the shared story. D&D's about telling a story as a group. So, let the other players contribute through the words and deeds of their characters. Encourage players to engage by asking them what their characters are doing. That is, that's the bread and butter of D&D. Now, they also say it's not a competition. The DM isn't competing against the other players. It's your job to provide fun challenges and keep the story moving. Some people who I have played with in the past don't understand that concept. I've had DMs feel like it's them against the players, or sometimes even the players feel like it's them versus the DM. It's not really like that. It's about, telling a story and having fun. It's not a competition. With that, they also say, be fair and flexible. Treat your players in a fair, impartial manner. Don't play favorites. The rules help you do this, but when you need to act as a referee, try to make decisions that ensure everyone is having fun. That has been like the critical thing for me whenever I'm running a table. I want to make sure everyone is having fun. That's like the ultimate point of a game. Now, communication with your players is something I've always said is very important. Open communication is essential to a successful D&D game. Many problems can be solved or even prevented with honest conversation. Ask questions and solicit feedback after or between sessions. This is something I have done. I've had players be like, hey, do we want to meet up at X restaurant and talk about the session, go over a couple things? And I often ask for notes. Because without that, I don't get better. I don't become a better DM. And as always, it's okay to make mistakes. No one is perfect. No one should try to be perfect. And I will tell you firsthand, it is impossible to know every single rule, every single ruling, and every single spell. There's just too much. So don't feel bad if you get something wrong. Now, right here in this bold section is where they go over most of the new stuff they've added. They've given us advice on how to be a good DM, and they gave us tracking sheets, which are available for being printed off, like right now. And I've taken a look at a few of them already, and let me tell you, it's some useful stuff. Like, it has trackers for what magic items you've given out, things for travel, and you even have formulas to calculate how long it should take your players to get from point A to point B, which is very nice. That's something I personally struggled with. Encounter building assistance. I've had a lot of people need that in the past, and they know I'm a DM, so they come to me for advice, and I'm looking forward to going over that section and see how it's changed a little bit, because even with their old way of doing that, it was always kind of a little difficult sometimes. Hi, Bean. Are you going to ruin my shot? No, thank the merciful goddess. Now, they expand and revise a few magic items, and they introduce the Bastion system. Bastions are strongholds that you can have your players get, but the Bastion system, when I took a quick look, also kind of gives you, the DM, access to, like, city or town-specific encounters and advice on how to do things within a town when people are shopping or just goofing off. And my favorite, the lore glossary. They have a brief summary of all the planes of existence, the major players inside of them. They go over domains of dread, domains of delight, all that stuff. And I don't have to spend hours Googling anymore, which is so nice. So nice. Now, in the next 2 pages, they go over, like, the things you need, like the basics of how to run a game, note-taking, scheduling, card accessories, all that jazz. And they go over useful additions that aren't necessarily like, you have to have this, but it's stuff that, like, you've seen perhaps on the internet or on TV, and it's not wholly necessary to run a game of D&D, it just enhances it. They've got in the DM screen, adventures and source books, the battle grid and miniatures, and card accessories. Now, that is a lot of stuff that can help you improve your game as a DM, and I will expand upon all that later. I myself am partial to lighting. I find that helps out a good bit. Music track is also phenomenal. Now, they also go in, because this is something a lot of people struggle with, how to prepare for your sessions. They have this laid out for you. And they say that in a 1 hour, within an hour, they can complete 3 of these things here. And it's explore a location, such as a chamber in a castle or a cave, converse with an intelligent creature, reach a consensus on a divisive issue, solve a tricky riddle or puzzle, survive a deadly trap, or fight a low difficulty combat encounter. Now, depending on your group, that could be only like 1 or 2 things, and that's perfectly fine. But yeah, for example, they actually say here, a more difficult combat encounter might count as 2 or 3 things, and a tense negotiation can use most or all of an hour of play on its own. And that's fine. Now, prep. They say if you spend an hour each week preparing for your game, then you should follow the steps laid out here. And it's some good stuff, Step 1 is focusing on your story, and read or reread the introduction if you have, like, a pre-built adventure. Things like that. Make a bullet list of key plot points. That's something I do. Identify the encounters you want to run, and categorize them as definite, possible, and unlikely, and have your plans for that. 3 is gather the maps and stuff you need for that. Go over your combat stat blocks, social encounters, all that jazz. And then over here on step 4 is consider how much each definite encounter relates to the player's motivations. So this is where you as a DM will need to go through and read your characters' backstories if they provided any to you. And see how you can interweave the machinations of your story in with their stuff if you are running a like a homebrew session, or even certain types of modules. And then step 5 is to skim through the encounters you flagged as possible. And that's all with 1 hour of prep. They don't even talk about doing less than that, which I believe is fair. Then with 2 hours of prep, you get to carefully review your possible encounters and devote any time left to creating improvisational aids, which is horribly helpful. And then with 3 hours of prep, you do your unlikely encounters, or create a new encounter designed to appeal specifically to one player, or alter an existing encounter to relate to the goals and motivations of that player's character. And over the course of several sessions, you do this with all your players and their characters. Now that's something I'm glad that they pointed out, because not a lot of DMs will fully go into a character's backstory or their history or really do anything with them. And I see this a lot with pre-generated modules such as Curse of Strahd, because those really aren't built to delve into people's backstories. Those are more to tell a narrative, and people more or less kind of sign up for that. And then over here on page 9, they go into the basics of just how to run a session, which is, you know, you do your recap, you can do it yourself or have your players do it, things like that. You know, it's everything we've kind of been doing for a while now, and if you guys want, I can go into more in depth later, but they do have over here where they go into actions, spellcasting, combat, how time passes, how breaks work, how to end a session, and then they have a long example of play. And they specifically point this out now. It's that every DM is unique, and it's true. And they have examples here of how your playstyle is. Do you focus on more of a hack and slash or immersive roleplay? I like to try to balance both. Are you for all ages, or do you have mature themes? Are you gritty or cinematic? Is it serious or silly? Do you pre-plan everything, or do you improvise? Is it a mixture of themes and genres, or is it centered on one particular theme or genre, such as horror? And is it morally ambiguous, or are you heroic? And then it goes into house rules. And they go over how you can interpret some of these rulings and adjust them to how you and, as a whole, your players play. Now, they delve into atmosphere here, which is the use of music or lighting and all that jazz to sort of enhance their style. And then there's delegation. If there are parts of a game you prefer not to handle yourself, you can assign them to players who enjoy that sort of things. Like, if you don't want to break your narrative stride by looking up a rule, you can have your rules lawyer go through the rule book for you. And if you don't like tracking initiative, you can ask another player to do so. I don't do that, but maybe I should. And they go over learning by observing. And one of the best ways to run a D&D game is to observe another DM or play in a game yourself. That's kind of how I did it. Now, you can ask yourself these questions and help you reflect on a game that you've played in. Now, you can, beginning of the session, how did the DM start the session? Was there a recap? Body language. What gestures did the DM use when describing a scene? How did the DM's body language change when playing a different NPC? I like that. I like that a lot, because I'll have DMs do these like amazing voices, or they'll do very few. And an important thing when you're a DM is to change your physicality when you become a different character. For example, if you're playing a stout dwarfish man, you're going to want to talk more with your forearms and with your shoulders. Perhaps get a little crouch here, and don't be afraid to bang your fist on the table to help emphasize some of your points. And, of course, doing a DM voice. Do you change voices depending on what kind of character you're portraying? So, for example, you've got your rough and tumble dwarven man here, and then you can switch over to a more polite and sort of reserved elven man who likes to accentuate his points, like the Kennedys did with their thumb and forefinger. Now, and player participation, they go into that. Do you let your players participate in the world building, or do you make decisions that seem to send an adventure in an unexpected direction? And players do that too, and how do you handle it as a DM? And then there's rules abjugation. That's pretty much how strictly does your DM apply the rules. I like to be a little loosey-goosey. I find it more fun. And they talk about the three pillars. How much of the session was taken up by combat, exploration, or social interaction? What was the tone and mood? How did turn of phase work? And what were some elements of the world building that stuck out to you? These are important things to ask yourself whenever you're trying to become a better DM. Speaking of which, they have their first page here. This is something you kind of do at session 0. They have this handy dandy little thing here where you fill it out. You talk about your game theme and flavor, potentially sensitive elements, your hard limits, your soft limits, your players' hopes and expectations, and the at-the-table concerns. And they do give examples here, so potentially sensitive elements, spiders, snakes, demons, romance, and mind control. Your players' hopes and expectations, what do they want to see out of the campaign, and the at-the-table concerns, for example, shouting, swearing, alcohol, sharing dice, things like that. And at your session 0, going over all that stuff is the most important thing because, and they actually show it here, and this is the thing, ensuring fun for all. No one wants to come to a table, have something happen, and walk away upset or uncomfortable. I have personally had this happen to where something came up in a game, and I talked to the group when it happened. I said, hey, I'm not really cool with that. Can we retcon it? Can we not do this? Can we not do that? Because it made me very uncomfortable. And ultimately, it got ignored, and these things kept happening, and I ended up quitting the game and leaving that table because they did not respect boundaries, and that's something you have to do. That's where you set your hard and soft limits. And yeah, that's a very important thing for you guys to remember going forward. It's that you have to respect that. Otherwise, you're not going to have a good time, your friends aren't going to have a good time, and it could lead to some issues. But yeah. Now, they do talk about inter-party conflict, but unfortunately, this is all the time I have for today, because I gotta go to work. But, kind of as I have been, I'm also going to try and experiment with doing some more super fun stuff for you guys, and see what I can do to entertain you more. Well, I hope you guys have a great day. I'll see you all at the next one, and look at Mommy Loth. Isn't she gorgeous? They did so good on this cover. Mwah. Alright, well, bye guys, and have a fantastic day.